Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining ARC's weekly fireside chat. This week, our fireside chat is going to be a bit different. I won't have any guests, but thank you for joining. It's going to be different because today we're going to talk a bit about and reflect on both the Tulsa Massacre and the massacres throughout U.S. history on not just African Americans, but Native Americans and others, Mexican Americans. And so I'd like to first give a warning to all of our viewers that some of the content that we may share is pretty sensitive, and some of the pictures that we might share on screen can be pretty brutal. So just want you to know that before you get started. And so May 31st, just a few days ago, Monday, was the 100th anniversary of Tulsa, Oklahoma's destruction of Black Wall Street, as we call it. And it was really great that our president recognized that and went out there and spoke to it. So with Tulsa, a really prosperous Black community, they called it Black Wall Street. You had all these businesses, literally in 2 days, it was burned to the ground. Over 300 people were murdered. 40 city blocks were just destroyed. 10,000 Black residents were homeless. And a mass grave that may contain the remains of victims has recently been discovered. Think about that, a mass grave on U.S. soil, land of the free, home of the brave. I have to ask the question, was this intentionally covered up? And I mean, there's so many different links and things that have transpired, because Tulsa, though we recognize it and it was one of the larger ones, there were more massacres of African-American people throughout our history. And they're documented, but not documented as well as Tulsa maybe. For instance, in 1873, on Easter Sunday, April 13th, Easter Sunday, Colfax, Louisiana. This was a direct attack on Black men getting the right to vote during Reconstruction. Let's think about today's news and all of the things that's happening in all these states that want to push back on voting because of the big lie. And so after whites contested the results of the 1872 election, Black men, mostly state military, held up around the parish courthouse to protect local government. So these were actually people that were there to protect the courthouse. They were surrounded by a white mob, and the courthouse was set on fire. And anyone that came out was shot. And the estimate is between 62 and 81 African Americans were killed. Just to vote, just because they want to vote. Let's think about that right now today when we talk about, so that's Colfax, I believe it's spelled C-O-L-F-A-T, Louisiana. In many instances, I think all of these things have been intentionally covered up, including Tulsa, Oklahoma. Rosewood, another thriving Black community that was destroyed. And even in recent history, which we will get to shortly. So in Rosewood, in Florida, the Pine Woods, until it was literally, this is a town that was burned to the ground. And so on the screen, you can see all of these different Black massacres. And many of them you can actually, if you take a little time to Google, go to some libraries. Matter of fact, there's a really great book I was just looking up called A Day of Freedom for the Colfax Massacre. And it's titled Day of Freedom, Colfax Massacre, the Supreme Court and the Betrayal of Reconstruction. And I'm only on number 2 right now, some of the few notes that I gathered just to look at that. But that's a great book. I think you should take time to read it. This is not in our history books. This is not taught. No one knows about this stuff, or literally most of it. Why is that? So Colfax was one. Between 62 and 81 African-American men that were there to protect the courthouse were literally burned or shot as they came out. Then you have Wilmington, North Carolina, in 1898. And then you have, this one was interesting that as I was doing my research, Elaine, Arkansas. And so nearly 200 Black farmers and their families were slaughtered. 200 Black farmers and their families. And this was all because they had unionized and were planning to bypass the unfair sharecropping system, a direct link to slavery. And so they were literally massacred. And here's something that I had not seen in the news, and as I was doing some of my research, there was a commemorative tree in Elaine, Arkansas that commemorated this massacre. And this happened in 1919. And so in 2019, this commemorative tree was cut down, and now there's an investigation to find out who cut down the tree. This commemorative tree for over 200 Black farmers and their families that have been slaughtered just because they wanted a fair wage. Another massacre. So Tulsa's not unique. Just want to make that clear. And I may pronounce my next one wrong. OC, Florida, 1920, where local Black men and women attempted to vote, and white mobs responded by burning a Black church and killing between 6 and 60 people inside the church. Burned down a bunch of people, and burned down the church and killed a bunch of people inside. All because they wanted to vote. Wow. Let's think about right now today, all of these state legislatures that are trying to stop people of color from voting. See, back then they just blatantly killed you and did it, lynched you, burned you. And so when our president went to Tulsa and gave this great speech, and I voted for President Biden and Vice President Harris, and will do so again when they run again. I kind of feel like he let us down on one point, and I'm gonna get to that. I kind of feel like this administration is missing something, and that's the healing aspect. That's the healing aspect. We have not addressed the racial disparities in this country appropriately. And we missed another opportunity on the 31st of May. So I do want to give the president his proper respect and definitely support the fact that he gave an amazing speech. He says that Vice President Harris will be leading the administration's efforts to push back on these voting rights issues with different states that are trying to pass these restrictive laws. And we need that. We absolutely need that. This Jim Crow 2.0 type of legislation that's going on in these states to limit people being able to vote, especially people of color, definitely needs to be removed. President Biden also announced that he will use federal purchasing power to grow federal contracting with small disadvantaged businesses, many of them minorities, and we need that, absolutely need that. Specifically, $10 billion in community revitalizations, we definitely need that. $15 billion in competitive grants, targeting neighborhoods where people have been cut off from jobs and school. Definitely need that. 100% supportive of that. $31 billion to support minority-owned small businesses. Without a doubt, we need that. And so I want to definitely say thank you, President Biden and Vice President Harris, for those things. And he declared a new interagency effort to address the inequities in home appraisal and aggressively combat housing discrimination. All of these things we need, definitely need. What we have not addressed in this country, and what we need to address, and what I need you to do, is to call your representatives, to post, to follow up, to do it, just get loud so they know we need to address the healing aspect of this. And not just for African Americans. When we talk about healing, we're talking about giving ourselves a chance to become whole again and to really make this country and live up to the principles that this country we're founded on. We can't not address the past without asking about healing. And I keep talking about healing. And when I'm saying in terms of healing, I'm speaking specifically to House Congressional Resolution 19. We've talked about it a few times on this show. but we need to talk about it even more. This is a concurrent resolution that affirms the 400th anniversary of the revival of the first slave ship here in the Americas. That this nation owes a debt of remembrance not only to those who lived through the injustices of slavery, but also to their descendants. It urges the establishment of a U.S. Commission, a United States Commission on Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation to properly acknowledge, memorialize, and be the catalyst of progress, including towards permanently eliminating persistent racial inequities in our country. We need this. And yet, I haven't heard a peep out of our administration about this. This was, by the way, a piece of this resolution was presented by Congresswoman Barbara Lee and Senator Cory Booker. It's there right now waiting to be recognized. It's a commission. It's a way to get us back on track. It's a way to get us where we need to be, because if not, we're going to continue in this cycle where people just don't understand all of the travesties that have been weighed upon other races. For those of you that listen, I really want some questions from you. I want you to engage. I want you to ask some questions. This is the first time I'm doing this by myself. So I need you to be my guest, so to speak, and ask me questions, because this is a broader conversation than just Sam Lewis and ARC. This is a conversation that we have to have nationally. All of us need to be talking about, how do we heal? In criminal justice reform, we talk about restorative justice, and we believe in that, and I believe in that, and ARC believes in that. We need to look at truth, racial healing in that context. In order for us to be able to move forward, we have to be able to heal. People have to be able to look at the past and say, I understand what we've been through, but let's address it. Let's truthfully address what happened. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine, and someone asked me, did I agree with the tearing down of Confederate soldiers or monuments that were in the South? And I said, I wouldn't tear them down, but I will remove them and put them in a museum. And the reason why I would remove them and put them in a museum is because I don't want to ever, ever, ever forget what happened. Put them in a museum so we can always remember how this country started. But I don't want to celebrate someone who says that a person that's a human being that's of a different race is less than, is not human. I don't want to celebrate that, but I want to remember the history of this country. So those monuments should all be removed and put in a museum. We need to always remember the past so that we never, ever make the mistake of doing it again, whether it be America or anywhere else. Here's a great question. So what does the truth mean to you? Says Sam, what does the truth mean to you, and what does racial healing look like for you? So the truth to me is the truth. I think a really great example of the truth would be the Equal Justice Initiative's memorial, where they use, I believe, if my recollection is correct, for people that have been lynched throughout the history of the United States, they had 3 different ways of verifying who these people were and that they had actually been lynched. That's the truth. Every county that has a memorial or a monument needs to go pick their county up, including California that has one for Kern County. That needs to be an example of what the truth is. People were murdered just because they were Black. They were lynched. And lynching is brutal. If you haven't seen pictures of what it looks like, it's brutal. People will be hung and set on fire for no other reason than the color of their skin. And so what does truth mean to me? Truth means to me addressing those things. They should be in history. Truth means that we should look at these things fearlessly and say, okay, this is a dark chapter in the history of this country, but we should face it and understand that in order for us to move forward, everybody needs to know the truth. Because there are many Americans that don't know anything about Tulsa, don't know anything about Rosewood, don't know anything about the lynching history. And much of this is not even in our history, but it's in school. And in order for people to understand and know what others went through, it has to be put out there. Native Americans, genocide, there are tribes that don't even exist anymore because they were murdered. How many people really, really fully understand that entire tribes were just slaughtered? And so when we talk about truth, those things need to be in our history books, big and bold for us all to remember and read about. So when you say, what does truth mean? So that's what truth means. And then when we talk about racial healing, what does it look like for me? For people that live today, not to say that we should put that in the past. For people to say what happened was horrible. What happened was wrong. What our country did to races of people, not just African Americans, but natives, Chinese, Japanese, Mexicans, was wrong. And we need to sit down and have an honest conversation, admit all of those things that were wrong. And we need to have memorials that recognize those things and celebrate us being able to say that we see this and we're now addressing this. So that's my truth. And the healing part is to have honest dialogue, especially if we can find descendants of both sides. When I was young, I remember going down to Louisiana, and I remember going on plantations. So family members that are linked to those plantations, let's have the conversation. President Biden set up a commission. Let's have the conversation. Let's have the conversation where it's open in every single city. Let's talk about it. How do we heal from this? I'm not an expert in this field when we talk about something this big, because normally what we do when we talk about restorative justice, we bring the two parties to the table. We're talking about entire races of people that have been slaughtered, that were enslaved, all of these different things. So this is bigger than something that I would be able to do. This is something that we have to do collectively across this country. Yolanda says we will burn current history books and make the new ones of the truth. I would keep the old history books, at least some of them, just so we can see that the lie that was once attempted to be perpetrated. But yeah, we need new history books to show the different cultures that were looked at as less than. I think we should take the time to have these conversations in every major cities and in rural areas. I think we should seek the descendants of these different races, whether they were enslaved, whether their tribe was almost completely killed off, and ask them to the table. Let's hear the histories. Let's fully understand what this country was built on. And then let's start on a path forward to heal. I've often had conversations with my grandsons and younger people, and people that ask me, why is it important that we remember the past? Why can't we just put it behind us? Like, I would love to be able to do that, but the systemic racism that we experience every single day in our country is linked to the past. Poverty and what we experience is linked to the past. And I know we'll have people that will say, pull yourself up from your bootstraps. I would love to, but I don't have boots. Let me give you an analogy that I've said before and that I share with my grandson. As a kid growing up, I really enjoyed playing Monopoly. And so when my grandson said, how did or does slavery affect us? I said, imagine playing Monopoly, which he does with his grandpa. And the first 4 times around, you can't move, only grandpa can move. And I can buy all the property I want, and I get to collect $200, but you can't move until I've gone around 4 times. And then after going around 4 times, you can go. And he looked at me and said, that wouldn't be fair. I said, that's what slavery is. Not only was that what slavery has done to us, but that's where it's put us at. But what about people like Oprah and other successful people? They succeeded despite the barriers, despite it. Because if you think about it, during slavery times, you could be hanged and whipped just for learning how to read. One of the things that I love to do, my books, I have books everywhere. I love the electronic books. If I lived back then, I would not be allowed to learn how to read. I would be hanged and whipped, or whipped and hanged. It would depend on the person who owned me. And so someone asked, what is the learning in school about racism and Black lives? So my grandson, just as I didn't see those things in school, he gets it from grandpa. Trust me, grandpa has all kinds of books and we talk about it. And so one of the things is just making sure that the next generation is aware of these things. I don't want him to be angry about it, but I want him to understand what has transpired in the past. I want him to understand things like redlining. Like, for instance, President Biden talked about establishing and making sure that the disparities in housing, specifically combating discrimination. And for those of you that don't know what redlining was, it was literally the way that they set it up where Black people could not live in certain places. You were not welcome there. And in some places, it's still like that in America, I believe. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it is. It's just not as blatant. If you have an opportunity, another great book to read is When Affirmative Action Was White. And it's not a racist book. It's literally an example of the Great Deal, the GI Bill, and all of these things that were available, just not to Black folks. And so when we move forward on this healing aspect, as the president says, he's putting forth all of these financial incentives and opportunities to make our communities better. We still need to heal. Money's not going to heal you. Wealth is not going to heal you. It'll put you where you should be at, but we still have to address what happened for over 400 years in this country. We have to address how this country came to be. The people that were here before us, we have to address that. And if we never take the time to address that, we'll never heal. That's what we have to do. I'm talking about this today because there's a direct link in the work that I do to end mass incarceration and slavery. I don't know if any of you would know what paddy rollers were. They were slave patrols. And if you follow the history, eventually you start seeing modern day policing came from paddy rollers. They came from slave patrols. So I think in this time, in this age that we're in right now, when we are willing to step forward courageously and stand for brothers like George Floyd and say enough is enough, we also need to say we need to look at our history and be honest with it. Be honest about it. Have the conversation so that we can heal. I've had people push back on me when I talk about the monuments, the Confederate monuments. And I think the best example of what I've ever heard when we talk about the monuments and them being removed is, let's stop for a minute and just have a truthful conversation of the Confederacy. Not trying to take anything away from anybody, but they literally were insurrectionists. They were. They went against the Union, the United States. That's like right now, if I took up arms and said, I'm going to go against the United States, like January 6th, they went against what they were supposed to stand for. It was treason. By definition, the Confederacy was designed by, they were treasonous. And so if this was treason, how do we hail them as heroes of the South? Because what they stood for was being able to keep Black people as slaves. And they went against the Constitution that says all men are created equal. And by the way, I'm against that too. It should be all people are created equal, just to be on point there. But these are some of the conversations that we don't want to have, that we are afraid of, that people will disagree with, that people will push back on, but we should still have the conversation in order for us to truthfully heal. Something that has come up recently is reparations. Wait a minute. If able to speak about these truth commissions, who do you want to see there? Who would I want to see in truth commissions? That's a pretty good question. I would want a little bit of everyone there. I want people in the South that don't believe Black people have had it bad to be on these truth commissions so they can have an open, honest dialogue. I would want people, I want natives that carry their history verbally to be on this commission. The same with African Americans, Chinese Americans. I want people that have lived through some of these travesties or have histories that we may not know of to present, to be on these truth commissions, to be able to talk about it. Scholars to be on it, people that have gone through mass incarceration. I would like to have a robust commission of people that really want to look at this from all the different angles. People that are willing to listen too, though, and not just be stuck in their own views. I'm always willing to admit when I'm wrong if you can show me that I'm wrong. If you can show me other information that can change my point of view, I'm always willing to listen. Those are the type of people that I like to see. I'd like to see a rainbow of people there from all different backgrounds, men, women, LGBTQ. Let's have this opportunity to heal. Because if we don't take this commission, if we don't, the first step is, first of all, just putting it out there for people to see that there's a commission for us to support, to get started so that we can begin to heal. The second part is reparations. And people are going to say, well, I wasn't around when that happened. Why should you get reparations? Remember the monopoly analogy that I gave you not long ago? That's why. Some of us might just like say, okay, what would be great reparations? I think Rosewood actually had some reparations that were given out once the lineage of the people who were harmed there, college tuitions and things of that nature. So there are a number of different things that we could do in terms of reparations. Go back and study your history and really understand that there were actually African Americans that owned farms and then they were ran off. In LA County, there's a really great story that's going on when we think about reparations. And so I forget the name of the beach, but in Janice Hahn's district, in Supervisor Hahn's district, there was a family that lost their property under eminent domain. It was beachfront property, and I can't recall the exact name of it. If you can, Viv, please pull that up. And this was in 1921 or something like that. And so Janice Hahn would like to give the family descendants back that property that was unrightfully stolen from them. That's reparations. Simple. It was taken from them wrongly, give it back. That's reparations. I like that. That's not a bad idea. I think that's Janice Hahn for president. I mean, that's fair. So when we talk about healing and reparations, all of these things are part different links that can help us become better, help us become more unified as a country. Not just in LA, not just in California, but across this country. There is a California beach seized back family in 1924 set to be returned. Set to be returned to the family that it was stolen from. Do you think that's fair? Is that fair? Is that a fair reparation? Let's ask ourselves that. Would you want that to be done for you? And when I say that, I mean that to anyone, any race. Would you want that to be done for you? I'm certain that I would want it to be done for me if it was wrongfully taken from mine. There was, and back to Rosewood just for a minute to share a little bit. So free tuition for the descendants of Rosewood was one of the things that they did for reparations. And I think that's another great way to be able to give back to people that had so much taken from them. If you want to learn more, look at our screen right now to read more about the Rosewood Massacre. And the same with some of these other massacres. You can literally Google these things. There are books that are being written about them. There are more research that's being written about them. In order for us to move away from these things, in order for us not to have another event like, here's a more recent one. Charleston, South Carolina, 2015. We all remember that. Massacre took place in a church in Charleston, South Carolina, June 17, 2015, when a white supremacist killed 9 people, including a senior pastor in South Carolina State Church. They were in there praying in a church. There's the image. Those are the people that are no longer here with us. We shouldn't have that in this country. We should have healed a long time ago. And so again, I just want to say, I support the president, but you missed an opportunity on the 31st of May. Let's definitely memorialize the 100th anniversary of Tulsa. But let's also take a moment and say, hey, there's an opportunity. There's this piece of legislation that's sitting around in Congress right now, House Congressional Resolution 19, which will allow us to heal. House Congressional Resolution 19. Originally, it started out House Congressional Resolution 100. Call, write, email, carrier pigeon to the people that represent you and tell them that you want to see this healing commission passed. It's not a bad thing. It's something that's good for all of us. And so for those Republicans who vote against anything that's good for all of us, stop and think for a minute. It'll make your state better. It'll make the people in your state better. It'll make you a better person. So when we think about these things, the U.S. TRHT, this is an opportunity for us to move to the next level, so to speak. There's a huge, by the way, thank you for that. So one of the questions is, can we please speak about the U.S. TRHT movement about transformation, not reconciliation, because we have never reconciled as a country. So there's a movement. I know in Los Angeles, there's a movement. A lot of these are things that are truth and reconciliation commissions that are happening organically on a local level in different states across the country. Again, you can tap in and Google a lot of this information, where people are getting together trying to figure out how do we create an organic way for us to continuously just grow this healing dialogue. What would be great is if we had leadership on a federal level that says healing is important for all of our people in this nation. And it's so important that we're going to put this as one of the top agenda items for us to talk about passing. I would even go as far as say, just for me personally, it's not just for me. It's for my grandson. It's for my granddaughter. It's for my great-grandchildren that haven't arrived yet. It's for all of the kids that are going to someday realize what a dark past our country has, and we've never addressed it. Let's be grown-ups. Let's have courage, and let's address it now. This will unlock the truth, and when we unlock the truth, it's going to unite this country in a way that I don't think we've ever seen before. Because people will then see us as people. People will understand the pain, the suffering that not just African Americans, but all of the groups I previously spoke of have gone through. But we have to have the discussion. We have to be fearless and have this discussion. We have to be the type of people that we want our children to be. Righteous people that stand up, that address these systemic problems that we have across this country. And so I wanted to just talk about all of these massacres. At the top of the hour, we talked about all of these different massacres. And they happened. Here's something too that's interesting. Germany has done healing after the Holocaust. And I plan on traveling Germany later in this year. There's some things that just have been calling out because I want to see different things that they've done to heal. A great book for you to read is called Caste, The Caste, that talks about a comparison of Jim Crow and Nazi Germany. But Germany has done amazing healing. South Africa has done some amazing work around restorative justice and healing. These are places that we can take notes from. These are places that we need to say, you know what, let's take a moment and look at us. There on your screen, you see Isabel Wilkerson's book, The Caste. It's a great book for you to read. It's amazing. It really gives you insight on a macro and micro level of both Jim Crow and Nazi Germany and even India. So when you have time, if you're a reader like me, because we're not in Jim Crow anymore, I can read as much as I want when I want. Read these books. They give you insight. Myrell, my brother, he says, you want to directly help the descendants of Massacre get involved in helping shine a light on issues, please email me at Myrell. So please take it down. So Myrell is an up and coming filmmaker, by the way. Take down his email address right there on the screen. He made this incredible short film that I saw before called Bromont, one of our housing. This guy, just don't forget me when you're famous, Myrell. But please, if you're interested in helping, reach out to Myrell. There's his email on our screen. There's a way for us to do this together, collectively, make our communities, our city, and our state better. I just want to talk about this because when I was watching all this celebration around Tulsa and the speech that the president had given, I thought to myself, how about healing? How about healing? I'm going to end this conversation a bit early. I just want to share those insights with you and thoughts with you. Look forward to speaking to you next week. We will announce what our new topic will be in the middle of the week. But right now, I want you to just go home and think about healing. What would healing mean and look like to us as a nation if we did it? Vivian says, and if we can't heal unless people know about it. I didn't learn about the massacre until I was 23. We need to know this stuff. Not to be mad about it, but to be able to heal from it. Not to be mad about it, but to make sure that it never happens again. Not to be mad about it, but to make sure that we're better for it. With that said, I want to thank everybody for joining. I look forward to speaking to you next Friday. Same bad time, same bad channel. Until then, take care. God bless and stay safe.